Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. This is Josh. I'm going to be your presenter today. Welcome to everybody. So essentially what's going on here, folks, is it's April now, right? We're getting to the April 15th tax filing deadline. We're getting calls from Church Windows customers who are needing to make corrections to tax forms and documents for whatever reason, albeit we kind of get those consistently from January all the way through uh, hopefully everybody can still hear me. I'm not sure what that's about. Sorry about that. Don't know what that is. A little interruption there. I'm not sure what that was. But I think everybody's still okay and can hear me. Looks like my audio is coming through. So yes, we're getting calls from customers asking to make corrections. Pastors, employees have taken their taxes, to be filed. And then all of a sudden they're saying, oh, they're wrong. And then they call us and how do they fix that? Okay. Or in this particular case, one of our cases is I've gotten a few calls of folks who, oh, well, my contractor the software didn't process a 1099 for a contractor for whatever reason, and I need to process that one now. Okay. So there's a couple of different scenarios we're kind of covering here, and they all deal with the same kind of layout when we're dealing with Atrix in terms of how it interfaces with Church Windows. Okay. So when a correction needs to be made or additional form is needed to be processed, how does that occur in Church Windows? Okay. We're essentially taking this from the standpoint where you've already processed your 1099s and 1096 earlier in the year. Those have already been filed, and your correction or additional form processing needs to occur now. Okay. While we strongly advise that the software you make the corrections in Church Windows to get, notably in payroll or accounting, to get that information to match what you're filing, ultimately, due to the audit requirements in Atrix, the corrections made in Church Windows don't or will not necessarily be recognized when processing the changes in Atrix to file with the government. Their system, our system, right? They have very strict audit requirements in their system as well. And so we're kind of having to punch holes through that to get what we need to get done through between Church Windows and their interface, okay? So to make a long story short, because we can produce 1099s for contractors that are paid through accounting or through payroll, it's important to distinguish that we're going to make the correction in the module where the employee or the contractor was paid. Okay. So if I process the contractors or the 1099s through accounting, I'm going to process the corrections through accounting. If I processed it through payroll, I'm going to make it through payroll. In our situation, we've got kind of merged databases in our data today. So we're going to actually be doing it in accounting, but it's going to be for either one, okay, because we have them. But if you've got contractors that were exclusively paid and processed through accounting or through payroll, you're going to do it in that module, right? I can't have contractors that are paid through payroll show up to make a correction through my Atrix processing and accounting. They're two different databases, okay? All right. Atrix has a strict audit process for how the forms and filings are dealt with. This is particularly true if you e-filed with them for your forms. But they also give you limited options for when you printed the forms as well, okay? There are processes and options for how the forms are processed, but they can be limited, all right? They want to protect you. Their job is to ensure that you and they remain in compliance with government requirements and regulations and to ensure that things are done correctly, all right? You do have the option to reprint completed 1099s and at the 1099 history options, and we're going to look at that in a minute, all right? But I want to first point out that we had a webinar a while ago on the importance of tax document and form retention, all right? So I want to show this to you because this is really important. If we go up to churchwindows.com, we go to Customer Support and Resource Center, type in the key down here, down the right side here. Let me get out my highlighter. Right here under search, I type in the word merging or start typing it, all right? And That now brings up an accounting and payroll merging 1099s. Ours is being merged. Okay, that's where we're gonna see that in a minute. All right. But the other thing is under here, if I type in retention, form retention, over here to the right, left-hand side, right over here. This was a video I did back in September about ensuring that you maintain copies of forms. All right. If you've got copies of forms, even the ones for your contractors or employees, you can go into history and get those out of church windows through Atrix if you wish. But if you've got them on hand, you could just make a copy of them right there for your employee or your contractor and present them to them. You don't have to go in and do the jump through the hoops that we're going through right now today in order to be able to make that work or to get those forms, okay? I'm going to show you how to do it, but I'm just saying if you've got the documents in hard copy form in a folder already there, you don't need to do this. That's all, okay? It never hurts to have hard copies of important tax form documents. I don't care whether it's W-2s, W-3 for the employee, for the church, the 1099s, 1096s for the contractors, or your 941 forms. Have those copies available in a folder, okay? All right, so I don't know if you can reprint completed forms if you've e-filed with Atrix. I think you can at least get the record copy of it, but if you get, if you get a call from an employee who's saying, oh, I'm trying to file my taxes here and it's April, first week of April, and I can't find my W-2 or my 1099, we can go in and we can reprint the forms, but it may or may not be an official copy. Okay, I know I can do it when I print them, but if you e-filed with them, I don't know how that gets done. You would have to contact the Atrix folks just to figure out how to do that, okay? All right. The reason why Atrix folks makes this so difficult and strict sometimes, particularly with regards to e-filing, is because once you filed those forms, they get kind of cranky and can really assess some serious penalties, and you can get into some real hot water if all of a sudden they get additional W-2s or 1099s from contractors that they didn't get submissions for when you filed them originally. Okay, so they really do make it specific in terms of how you handle that. They want to protect you. Okay, it's fine to make the changes, but the government has a process for how those corrections and changes are made, and Atrix tries to be at best ensure that you remain compliant with that too, okay? So in one of our scenarios, we had a contractor that was paid. We had payroll contractors that were paid in payroll and others that were paid in accounting. So we've merged those into ones when we did that 2 months ago or 3 months ago at the end of January. So I can now process these corrections or additional changes from either accounting or from payroll. Okay, my 1099s. Let me show you what I mean. When we go into reports and export, tax reports, tax forms, okay, takes us a few seconds for this to come up. We just have to be patient till it brings up our tax forms list. I've done this and made sure it works. Going to choose my year of 24. I can go to history, but if I go right here to 1090, 2024, 1099 NEC and click print, it opens up. Takes a few seconds, but it opens up my 1099 history options page, right? This confirms that I had processed the forms, in this case, for a couple of, or three, I think 3 or 4 contractors through church windows and had completed the processing in Atrix, all right? Here it is. So it's the correct, 1099 history options. Like I said, I can find it in history back here if I want, but I can also just do exactly what I did. I'm talking about the history button right here, okay? But it becomes a little bit more difficult to find that. Sometimes there's a lot more information in there, but if I just choose the form I'm wanting and click print like I did, it'll bring up this window automatically, okay? All right, so I just want to point out that if I close out of this and close out of payroll, okay, and I now go back into accounting, and I go back up to reports, tax, and it opens up my forms. I'm going to bring up my contractors here as well, 2024, 1099 NEC, click print. I'm going to pick my contractor that I had paid through payroll and click OK. it brings up the same exact window, same page, okay? So again, they are really good at knowing when and where we process the forms. All right. So one of the things that I was going to, I skipped over that and I got ahead of myself on that, okay, is when I'm back at the forms, one of the things I want to point out here is only contractors that were paid or vendors or payees that were paid $600 or more appear in this list. Notice when I sort by amount paid, the lowest amount is $645.90. I see no other contractors in this list, okay? So if I had a contractor, one, that maybe the way that I posted their transactions through Church Windows accounting was that they weren't recorded as payments. This window only looks at payments posted to contractors for the year. So if I'd used any other type of transaction to record payments to them, they're not going to appear here. All right. So this is, again, another reason why if you're paying contractors through accounting, make sure you're going through the pay bills process to get those payments recorded and they appear in this list. All right. So in my case, the other contractor that I'm missing was paid or recorded through accounting. For whatever reason, they're not showing up in this list, but I still need to get them a 1099. All right. I could go through and look at that and try to figure that out, or maybe I did, and I did post journal entries instead of payments. Something occurred that they're not showing up here. Am I out of luck? Absolutely not. I can still get them processed. So how I do that now when I go to now is I now choose one of my contractors that was paid. I simply need to get to this 1099 history options page, all right, in order to do what I need to do. Got a contractor who says they've got the wrong amount on their 1099. How do I do that as well? We're going to go look at this right now, okay? And again, folks, because I've merged these two files, these are going to be the same list of employee or contractors, whether it was through payroll or accounting. Doesn't matter. Few things about this page, all right? First of all, like I said, it tells me what I finished. So right here under completed actions, let me look at, and I'll show you what I mean. Last completed actions right here shows recipient 1099, federal 1099, payer 1099, last processed today. I did this to create the data, but it would show you when you last processed this. And certainly if you e-filed them, it would say e-filed instead of printed. Okay. Again, doesn't mean you're out of luck. It just tells you what you did to complete the action. In my case, I printed it and the date. Many of yours are probably going to be right around the end of January, maybe beginning of February, hopefully by the end of January, since that was the deadline. Okay. Notice here on the right-hand side, we also have other available actions. Correct completed 1099s, which is what we're going to come back to. You can also choose the option to e-file or print incomplete 1099s, okay? So that would be an option over here, but I would also be told that over here on the left-hand side if something was incomplete. So if I had something incomplete, it would say incomplete instead of showing printed and the date, at which point I could choose that and complete that processing, all right? I can also reprint completed 1099s. So if I need to go in there and reprint a 1099 for a contractor, I can do that. All right, by simply choosing that button, clicking next, and it'll say, which ones do I need to reprint? Do I need to reprint the recipient 1099? Do I need to reprint the federal? Okay. Let's see if we can do that. Let me get rid of my drawing here. If we do reprint completed and click next, here it is. It says reprint options, all recipients. Do I need federal copies? Do I need reprint will display state 1099s following or payer copy? Or just reprint selected recipients? Okay, and then once I click next from there, it will then actually open those forms and allow me to print those. Okay, so you could reprint them for either filing for federal. If they say, oh, I didn't receive those, you could do that. You can do state if applicable. In this case, for Ohio, that's not required. And or all recipients if I need to resend those out. But in this case, if I just selected one of them and click reprint selected and click next, see, here's all of my contractors that I paid or printed forms for, and I can just pick the one I want. and click next. Now that just allows me to reprint. It doesn't allow me to fix or change anything. All right? This is really important. I can reprint a lost form, say, or print a form for them, but it allows me no way of editing any of that. So I would just check the person I wanted, click next, opens up the preview of those official forms, allows me to print those and distribute them or file them. Okay? Not doing that today. Also, finally, before we get into our correct option on this, and again, folks, we're going to see similar type functionality tomorrow in tomorrow's W-2 corrections as well. Start over is an option always. However, we strongly advise against this, and Atrix does too. Why? Because if I click Start Over and go to Next, it's going to say, have any copies been distributed? Well, if I've already submitted the forms at the end of January, sent in my 1099s and my 1096 form, I've distributed those, both to my contractors and filed them with the government. There is no way I'm starting over. Okay? So this would only be an option if you have not actually filed or distributed forms. So I'm going to definitely say cancel on that because I'm not doing any of that, all right? You also have a E1099 password lookup, so you can look up there. That's if you've e-filed with Atrix. You can look password lookup to get back to those if you wish. What we're really here to look at is correct completed 1099s. All right? So if I click on that now and click Next, it now pops up and says, have you distributed any of the following copies? And I'm going to go, oh yeah, I've distributed my recipient copies to my current contractors, and I filed with the federal government. All right? So if I hadn't, I would uncheck the one that I had not. But in this case, I've done both of those. So I'm going to click Continue from here once I've checked those. Then what it does now is it now kicks me into the Atrix spreadsheet. You probably all have seen this if you did this earlier this year. Okay? So it says, warns you, you should read this. Correcting previously reported forms. Make the correction only if the change made will be resubmitted for corrections. All right? If you want to print a copy or submitting the corrections. Print the official forms and mail it in if not filing, or if filing, click next through the forms into the e-file session window. And that's what's going to happen if you e-filed. Once you make the corrections or changes or additions here, then you're going to go, it's going to kick you into the Atrix e-file system and allow you to have them submit those forms for you. Okay? So we're going to click OK through that. So this is where the real power in this screen comes, folks, okay? Is because, you know, if I go, like right here, let's say if Joe Snow here said, oh, my amount of $800 was incorrect, okay, on my form, it should have been something different. I can change anything on this screen, anything at all, okay? So right here, let's say he said, oh, you claimed that I had made $800 in income, but it was not 800, it was only 700. I can change that amount right here, okay? But notice what happens when I do that. Over here on the far left-hand side, we see that that line now changes to red. That little number 4 changes to red. That says, or is telling us, there's a change to something which has been officially filed, and there's an amendment that's been made. Okay? So, in this case, I definitely would not want to make payer made direct sales of $5,000 or more, so I don't know why that was checked. Okay? But it's showing up in red. Okay? So that's going to now allow me to go ahead and print the forms that I need to give to Joe and to send into the government to tell them that I filed an incorrect return earlier in the year. Okay, and to let him know that he's not wrong, and so when he gets an amount, files an amount that's less, that there's no issues or conflicts, and I don't get anything back from the government about that. Okay. Excuse me. So this is what I would do for Joe if I was wanting to file, you know, a new or changed form for him, a new amended form. Okay. But what I'm also here to show you is, folks were probably going, well, Josh, if you had a contractor who you didn't have a form for, how do you get them in this list? It's very straightforward, folks. Okay, if I go to Edit, I can choose Rows, And right now I can choose insert row right here. So it says number of rows to insert. I could add 1, I could add 5, I could add 10. I'm just doing 1. But notice it now adds a row. And I can do, Clark, Becker. So I can literally just add a contractor here, and I can put in their tax ID number. Come on, Josh, you can do this. So Clark's organ repair. Okay, we're getting in what we need to get in the system here, so it allows us to process the form. Okay, so I can just continue moving left to right, getting all of the information entered as needed. And you're going to see what it is here, what's going to happen momentarily when I do this. Okay. All right. And I'm just going to continue across here, and just for consistency's sake, it's not letting me do that. It's okay. Over here, I can simply go over to the amount here now to the right and type in the amount that I had paid for him for the services rendered for this past year. Okay. And from here now, I can go ahead and just process the forms, just continuing to go to next. Okay. It'll bark at me if I have anything wrong or is needed. All right. It'll pop up with that dialog box and tell me. So I'm just going to continue to click next across the top of the page. Okay. So now it says missing or invalid filing code. Where is that? Let's go back and correct. Okay. So I missed a spot right over here. Filing state, Ohio. Perfect. Get that entered. Get that set, go to next. It now then, click next one more time. It now brings up my normal prepare steps information. I'm going to agree. Here now, it's actually telling me what forms it's actually going to be providing for me. Okay, one corrected 1099 NEC, a federal 1096 corrected, an added 1099 NEC, and a print federal 1096 added form. Also, it's going to allow me to print the recipient 1099 and instructions for him, for Clark, since I got that, and I've got one that's showing that things have been corrected. So this is taking care of everything I need in order to submit since I had printed. Okay, so all I would do from this point now is just go to next. All right, and it's now going to feed this information into the Atrix forms processing. And I'm now back to one of 8 forms up here, ready for me to print these forms to then submit, distribute to my missing, contractor for the missing. So here's my, here's where I'd be getting out my Post-it flags or Post-it notes and my pen, and paper clips, and I'd be getting, organizing these so I can make sure that I get them to the appropriate places. So this would be the federal 1099 NEC corrected. I believe this is the one that I would send in that shows the additional or missing contractor that I had, right? So I've got to let the government know, hey, whoops, I missed, here's a change to Joe's snow blow removal, Joe Blow's snow removal. Then down here, I've got Clark's organ repair somewhere in here. Where is it? It should be here somewhere. Oh no, maybe it is just the amended one. Either way, it's got what I need. I would send this to my printer, saying no more forms, red forms required. Send this to my printer. I'm not printing anything. Grab it off the printer. Go to next step. Goes up now to 1096 corrected. So this would be my amended 1096 form that I would send into the government to show, hey, I've got some new totals here. Again, print final. Again, warning of no red copies required. I'm just imitating sending this to a printer, folks. That's why this is doing this. Again, grab it off the printer, put my Post-it note on it with my, if necessary, that I can make sure I know what it's from. So right up here, folks, again, I'm talking about in the upper left corner here, this report 2 of 8, federal 1096 corrected. That's what I'm using as my guide for what I'm putting on my Post-it note on each one of these. Okay, next step. Okay, now opens up my federal 1099 NEC added to show that I added a 1099. Okay, there's Clark's organ repair with the additional amount that I've added. Print final. Okay, that goes into the government as well. I'm not printing any of these. So once I've grabbed that off my printer, go to next step. Process continues ad nauseum until I've gotten them grabbed all off the printer and organized. All right. My 1096 added, so it's showing an increased or added amount of $1,560 right here. I'm talking about right here, folks, right here. Okay, so it's adding in. It's not, the government is always about wanting you to send in what's changed, not a new form. Okay, print final. Click OK again, no red copy required. Send it to my printer. I'm just using a PDF driver, folks, here, so I'm just sending it, acting as though I'm sending it to a printer. Next step, here's my recipient 1099. So this is the one that I'll give to Clark for him to file with his taxes. Send this to my printer. Oh, Joe Blow has got a new one as well. But there's two here, one on Joe Blow snow removal and then Clark's organ repair down here. Right, so I got to print both of these. So I would print final. Says please insert the perforated forms. Don't need those. Those can all be red copy or go to plain paper. I would print those, grab them off my printer. Again, then when I'm done, I go to next step. Got a couple more of these to do, folks. Payer 1099 NEC corrected. So I believe this would be for the church's copy. So I would print this and put this in my folder with my original forms that I had filed or the other forms that I'm filing. Again, not printing anything. Grab it off the printer. Put in payer 1099 corrected. Go to next step. Payer 1099 NEC added. So one is for the corrected W-1099 that I there, and this is for the added 1099 for Clark. Okay, printing to print final. Again, not printing putting any forms in there, just plain paper. Again, just tricking it into thinking I've printed it. And final step is the instructions that I would imprint and include with Clark's form, okay, to send to him. And then I would print that to my printer and include that with his copy. And now I'm done. So now when I click next step one final time, if you e-filed with Atrix, you would have printed already your copies for your record copies. And again, it all depends on whether you had Atrix send your contractors their 1099s or whether you distributed them, okay? Either way, it's going to, now if I click next step, it's going to take me back to my history options page, right? But it would kick you into the Atrix system in order to be able to e-file the corrections or changed forms that they would take care of for you. Final thing I want to say about that, it's promptly 1:30, folks. I'm sorry this went on a little long today, is yes, there's going to be an additional charge for them to be able to file the corrections or changes for you. But I've done this, and I don't know exactly what those charges are, but I've seen folks do this on probably 3 or 4 occasions in the past, couple of months. And in every single one of the situations, can't say that would be true for you, but in every one of those situations, it was less than $20. So they're not terribly unreasonable with regards to getting these amendments filed and completed. All right. So just saying, use them. They're there. They're affordable. Okay. Now, if I go into my history options, this information is all here. Okay. You have the ability to get this all back. I've done a lot of these things, folks, so there's a lot in here. But if we notice, period 2024, 24, 24. So there's a lot of information in here that we've got available to you. As long as you complete that processing, folks, back to those history options, the history of what you've done is available. All right? So that, folks, is where we are going to leave things for today. Lots of flexibility in their system, and they really do help you and support you. Okay, whether you print the forms and mail them in, or whether you e-file with them, they help make sure that you are protected and compliant. So take advantage of this. You don't need to go and find forms and handwrite them and complete them. You can do it all through Church Windows accounting and or payroll, whether it's 1099s, W-2s, 941 forms. I don't care what it is. I'm a fan now of Atrix. I'm sold. I've been using them a couple years, and I really like what they do. But so again, folks, I'm finished with what I'm going to talk about here for today.